I'm Maya, 32 years old, and if you had met me a few years ago, you would have thought I had the perfect life. A stable marriage, a hardworking husband, and a comfortable little apartment that we built from nothing. When I married Ethan 8 years ago, I genuinely believed I had found my person, my calm in a world full of chaos. He was that kind of man who didn't talk much, but when he did, his words carried warmth. He wasn't rich, not by any stretch, but he was kind, gentle, and loyal. And for a long time, that was enough. Ethan worked as a janitor at a private school. The pay wasn't amazing, but he was steady, the kind of man who'd rather skip lunch than show up late. Back then, I admired that about him. I used to say, it's not the job that defines a man, it's the heart he puts into it. But if I'm being brutally honest, somewhere along the way, I stopped believing my own words. You see, while Ethan stayed in his comfort zone, I was always hungry for more. I wanted to do something bigger, to prove to myself, and maybe even to the world, that I could be more than just someone's wife. So, I pushed hard, worked through nights, climbed the corporate ladder, earned my MBA, and landed a job in finance. It wasn't easy, but it felt incredible, finally being respected, finally being seen. Except, with every step I took up, it felt like Ethan stayed exactly where he was. At first, he was proud of me. He'd tell people, my wife's killing it at work. But slowly, I could sense a shift. He'd come home tired, quiet, eyes heavy, smile fading faster than before. And then, the silence began. You don't really notice when it starts, those little gaps between conversations. But one day you wake up and realize you've become roommates who just share a bed. He'd spend evenings in front of the TV or playing video games while I buried myself in spreadsheets. I tried to talk sometimes. Ethan, maybe we should go out this weekend? He'd shrug. Maybe. Let's see how work goes. But that maybe turned into never. People say emotional distance kills faster than betrayal. And maybe that's true, because I started feeling lonely long before I ever crossed any lines. At work, I was surrounded by people who admired me, people who saw the ambitious, confident woman I'd fought so hard to become. And then there was Ryan. He was a senior associate at the firm, charming in that effortless, smooth kind of way. Always polite, always laughing, the type who made you feel like the only person in the room when he talked to you. At first, he was just a coworker. Then he became a friend. Then something more dangerous. It didn't happen overnight. It started with innocent things, grabbing coffee during lunch breaks, sharing memes on work chat, complaining about deadlines. But then came those subtle, stolen moments, the long glances, the way he'd brush his hand against mine when passing documents, the messages that lingered too long to be professional. I told myself it was harmless, that it was just the kind of attention Ethan used to give me before we became two ghosts living under the same roof. I remember one night vividly. Ethan was playing his video game as usual, headset on, completely zoned out. I had just come home after a brutal day at work and I don't even know what I wanted. Maybe just to feel seen. I asked him softly, "Can you pause for a minute?" He didn't even look away. "Give me 5, babe, I'm almost done." 5 minutes passed. Then 10. Then 20. By the time he turned around, I was already in bed, staring at the ceiling, tears rolling quietly down my face. That was the first time I realized I was emotionally gone. Ryan filled that void effortlessly. He'd notice everything. "You look tired today, Maya. You okay?" He'd say it like he meant it, like my exhaustion mattered. It felt intoxicating. That validation, that attention, that warmth, I didn't even realize I was starving for. And yet, I still told myself I wasn't doing anything wrong. I wasn't cheating. I wasn't touching him. I was just talking, laughing, feeling alive again. But you know how lies work, they start small, and then they grow teeth. One Friday evening, the firm had a client dinner. Ethan had offered to pick me up afterward, but I told him not to, said I'd get a cab home. Ryan was there too, and we sat next to each other the entire night. A little too close. A little too comfortable. After dinner, we walked to the parking lot, talking about nothing and everything. He offered me a ride home. I should have said no. I knew it, but I didn't. The ride was quiet, soft music playing, city lights flickering through the windshield. And when he stopped outside my building, there was this heavy silence, the kind that holds all the things you want to say but shouldn't. He looked at me and whispered, "You deserve to be happy, Maya." And then he leaned closer. I didn't pull away immediately. That's the truth I'll never admit to anyone, not even to myself. Nothing happened that night. Not physically. But emotionally, something broke. The guilt the next morning was unbearable. I looked at Ethan sleeping peacefully beside me. Same man, same face, same quiet breathing, and yet I felt like a stranger lying next to him. I made breakfast, tried to pretend everything was fine. But inside, I knew something had shifted permanently. I started comparing everything. How Ryan listened versus how Ethan dismissed. How Ryan made me laugh versus how Ethan barely noticed me anymore. It wasn't fair. Ethan wasn't cruel. He wasn't abusive. He was just absent. And that's the kind of neglect that doesn't leave bruises, but it still scars you. Weeks went by. My messages with Ryan got bolder. At work, we'd steal glances, text under the table during meetings, sometimes touch hands for a second too long. The thrill was addictive, like a dangerous secret that made me feel alive again. Then one night, after another fight with Ethan, something stupid about bills or dishes, I can't even remember, I snapped. I looked at him and said, "You don't even see me anymore. You don't care." He stared blankly, confused. "Maya, I'm trying. What do you want from me?" And I didn't have an answer. Because I didn't know. All I knew was that whatever we had, whatever love once lived between us, had turned into something cold and distant. That night, I didn't sleep next to him. I texted Ryan instead. I'd crossed the line. Not physically yet, but emotionally, I was already gone. And even though a part of me hated myself for it, another part of me felt free. Free from the loneliness, the silence, the indifference that had become my marriage. But what I didn't realize then was that freedom built on deception never lasts. Because guilt has a way of coming back, louder than love, heavier than hate. And soon, that guilt would come for me too. If someone had told me a few years ago that I'd be the kind of woman who'd betray her husband, I would have laughed in their face. I wasn't that person. At least, I didn't think I was. But life doesn't always break you all at once. It chips away, piece by piece, until you're too numb to notice how far you've fallen. After that night, I texted Ryan. Something inside me changed. I wasn't looking for an affair. I wasn't even looking for love. I just wanted to feel something. And that's exactly what I found. It started with small things, good morning messages, work chats that lingered into midnight, jokes that turned into confessions. I'd wake up and check my phone before even brushing my teeth, smiling at his texts like a teenager. Ethan noticed the change. He wasn't stupid. "Who's that?" he asked one evening when my phone buzzed on the table. "Just work stuff," I said too quickly, sliding the screen down. He looked at me for a long second, the kind of look that says more than words ever could. But he didn't push. Ethan was never the jealous type. He trusted me blindly. And for a moment, that trust made me hate myself. Because I was breaking it, slowly, deliberately, and without any excuse good enough to justify it. Ryan and I met more often after that. We'd grab coffee before meetings, lunch between deadlines, and sometimes, when we both stayed late, we'd share an Uber home. Those rides became our secret world, stolen minutes where reality blurred and everything felt easy. He'd hold my hand in the dark, and I'd let him. There was no guilt in those moments, just warmth, connection, and a dangerous kind of comfort. One night, when rain was pouring outside, we ended up at his apartment. I wish I could say it just happened, that it was an accident, that emotions took over. But that would be a lie. I made a choice. A conscious, selfish, devastating choice. The next morning, I stared at my reflection in the mirror and barely recognized the woman looking back. I had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. I went home to Ethan, my hands still shaking, heart racing. He smiled at me when I walked in, that same gentle smile I used to love, and I felt something collapse inside me. He asked, "Rough day?" I nodded, forcing a laugh.
Yeah.
just tired. He wrapped his arms around me, and I stood there, frozen, feeling the weight of my sin pressing down on my chest. It should have stopped there, but it didn't. Because the truth is, once you taste escape, it's almost impossible to go back to the cage, even if that cage is built out of love. Weeks passed. Ryan and I became bolder. I'd lie about late meetings, about traffic, about client calls that didn't exist. Ethan would text me, "You on your way?" And I'd reply, "Yeah, just leaving now," while still tangled in someone else's sheets. I knew it was wrong. I knew it was cruel. But guilt has this strange way of coexisting with desire. You learn to carry both, like twin weights pulling you in opposite directions. And the worst part? I started resenting Ethan for the guilt I felt. Every time he was kind, I'd feel smaller. Every time he forgave a lie, I'd feel angrier. Because he didn't deserve what I was doing. And yet, I couldn't stop. Then came the day everything started to unravel. Ethan had been quieter than usual lately. I'd catch him looking at me differently, not angry, not suspicious exactly, but distant. Like he was studying me from behind a wall he'd quietly built. One night, I came home late, hair damp from the rain, mind hazy from guilt. He was sitting on the couch, laptop open, but I knew he wasn't working. His eyes met mine. "You've been working a lot lately," he said calmly. "Yeah," I replied, pretending to sound casual. "Big project coming up." He nodded slowly. "With Ryan." That name, hearing it from his mouth, made my stomach twist. "What are you talking about?" I asked, too quickly, too defensive. He didn't answer. Just closed his laptop and walked past me into the kitchen. And in that silence, I knew. He knew. For the next few days, things between us were off. He stopped talking much, but he didn't confront me again. Instead, he started being extra polite, asking if I'd eaten, reminding me about laundry, doing dishes without being told. It wasn't kindness. It was distance disguised as calm. The kind of calm that comes right before a storm. I'd find myself glancing at him, trying to read his expression. Sometimes I wanted him to yell, to demand the truth, to react. But he didn't. And that made the guilt worse. Ryan, on the other hand, was growing impatient. He wanted more. More time, more attention, more commitment. He started asking questions I didn't want to answer. "When are you going to tell him? Do you even love him anymore?" And I didn't know what to say. Because I didn't have the courage to leave Ethan, but I also didn't have the strength to let go of Ryan. I was stuck in the middle of my own mess, too cowardly to fix it, too selfish to stop it. Then, everything exploded one evening. I had forgotten my phone on the couch when I went to shower. Ethan was sitting there when a message popped up. From Ryan. It wasn't graphic, just a "last night was perfect. Miss you already, red heart." When I stepped out, Ethan was standing by the door, phone in hand, eyes hollow. "Maya," he said quietly. "What's this?" I froze. Every excuse I'd ever rehearsed vanished. I opened my mouth, but no words came out. He stared at me for a long moment, then said the words that will echo in my head for the rest of my life. "I really thought you were better than this." There was no anger in his voice, just heartbreak. And somehow, that hurt more. I tried to explain I really did. I said I felt lonely, unseen, neglected. I said it just happened, that it wasn't planned. But even as I spoke, I could hear how hollow it all sounded. He didn't interrupt, didn't yell, just kept looking at me with those broken eyes, and that silence, that unbearable silence, said more than any argument could. Finally, he spoke. "Do you love him?" My mouth opened, but no sound came out. Because I didn't. I knew I didn't. Ryan wasn't love. He was an escape from emptiness. And the truth was, the emptiness wasn't Ethan's fault. It was mine. That night, he didn't sleep in the same bed. He stayed in the guest room. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to the sound of my own breathing, too loud, too heavy, too full of regret. Ryan kept texting, but I couldn't bring myself to reply. Every vibration of the phone felt like a reminder of the world I had destroyed. By morning, Ethan was gone. His toothbrush, his wallet, his shoes, all missing. A note sat on the kitchen counter. It said only one sentence. Don't look for me. I stood there, holding that note, and for the first time since this all began, I felt the true weight of what I had done. Not the thrill, not the guilt, not even the fear, just loss. Pure, unfiltered loss. Ryan called later that day. I didn't answer, because suddenly, I realized what I had really been searching for all along. Not love, not excitement, not validation, just peace. And I had destroyed the only person who ever gave it to me. That week was the longest of my life. No calls from Ethan. No messages. Nothing. I kept checking his social media, his email, even our joint bank account, hoping for a sign, any sign that he was okay. But there was nothing. It was like he had erased himself from my world. And maybe I deserve that. Because when you betray someone who loved you selflessly, you don't just lose them. You lose the version of yourself that you could have been if you hadn't made that choice. I went to work, pretending everything was fine. But Ryan could tell something was off. "What's wrong?" he asked during lunch. "I think it's over," I said quietly. He left. He nodded, expression unreadable. Then maybe it's time to start fresh. But his words didn't bring comfort. They brought clarity. Because for the first time I realized I didn't want to start fresh. I wanted to go back. But it was too late. That night, I sat alone in the living room, staring at the empty couch where Ethan used to sit, controller in hand, quietly laughing at his game. And I whispered to no one. "I'm sorry." It was too quiet for anyone to hear. Even myself. But it was the first honest thing I had said in months. The day Ethan left, I thought the silence in our house would last a night or two. I told myself he just needed space, time to cool down, maybe stay with a friend, maybe come back once the anger faded. But anger never came back through that door. Neither did Ethan. The first few days I kept waiting for a message. Something like, "Let's talk." Or even, "Why did you do it?" But there was nothing. Just a hollow, ringing silence that stretched across every corner of our apartment. His coffee mug was still in the sink. His old sweatshirt was still on the chair. I used to hate how he left things scattered. Now I couldn't bring myself to move them. It was like touching proof that he once existed here. I called him once, then twice, then a dozen times. No answer. Eventually I stopped trying. Because it hit me he wasn't ignoring me. He was done. I still went to work, still put on my lipstick and fake smile, pretending I hadn't burned down my own life. Ryan kept trying to talk, but the excitement that once made me feel alive now made me sick. Every time he called me baby, I flinched. It wasn't his fault entirely. He hadn't forced me to betray Ethan. I had done that all by myself. But what made me truly spiral wasn't losing Ryan, or even my marriage. It was losing the version of myself that Ethan used to believe in. One morning, my manager called me into her office. "Maya, can you explain what's going on between you and Ryan?" My heart sank. "What do you mean?" She sighed. "HR received a complaint. Apparently, someone reported that you and Ryan have been involved. The company's policy is strict about this. You know that." I froze. My stomach twisted into knots. Ryan had always said no one would find out. But someone had, and it didn't take long for the whispers to spread. Suddenly, every hallway felt colder. People stopped meeting my eyes. Meetings turned awkward. And Ryan? He started pulling away too. He stopped calling, stopped sitting with me at lunch, stopped defending me when the rumors started circling like vultures. Just like that, the man I had risked everything for disappeared when things got ugly. I wanted to scream. To tell him that I hadn't done this alone, that he'd promised me safety, that I had believed him when he said, "I've got you." But deep down, I knew that was never true. He didn't love me. He loved the attention, the thrill, the version of me that smiled at his jokes and made him feel special. The moment it became inconvenient, he ran. And I was left to deal with the ruins. A few days later, I got a letter, not from Ethan but from his lawyer. Divorce papers. The words blurred as I read them. Grounds, infidelity. Attached were screenshots, emails, messages, photos. Everything. My hands shook as I flipped through the pages. Every secret, every lie, Every moment I thought I had buried, there it was, printed in black and white. He knew everything. For weeks, maybe months, he had been collecting it all quietly, building his case while I was busy living in denial. And then, the final punch. The firm had suspended me pending investigation for professional misconduct. Within 1 week, I had lost my marriage, my job, and the last shred of dignity I had left. That night, I sat alone on the floor of our bedroom, surrounded by divorce papers, unopened bills, and the sound of my own sobbing. I kept whispering his name, hoping the walls would echo it back. But even the walls had stopped listening to me. I thought about how he must have felt, the humiliation, the betrayal, the heartbreak, and I realized something brutal. He didn't destroy me out of revenge. He just let the truth do the work. Because when the truth finally comes for you, it doesn't need to shout. It just stands there quietly, holding a mirror to your face. A week later, I saw him again for the first time. It was at a local grocery store. He looked different. Lighter. His hair was trimmed, he had a little stubble, and he was smiling, actually smiling, while talking to someone at the counter. I stood there behind the aisle, frozen, clutching a carton of milk I didn't even plan to buy. For a second, I wanted to walk up to him, to say sorry, to tell him everything. How sorry I was, how I missed him, how I would give anything to undo what I did. But then I saw the calm on his face, the peace, and I realized I didn't have the right to disturb that peace anymore. So I turned around and left, tears blurring the world into a mess of colors. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. The divorce went through smoothly, or maybe smoothly isn't the right word. Ethan didn't fight. He didn't argue. He didn't even show up for the final hearing. His lawyer handled everything. That hurt more than any screaming ever could. It meant he had already grieved me, that I wasn't a person to him anymore, just a closed chapter. I lost my job soon after. Officially, it was for policy violation, but everyone knew the real reason. My reputation was tainted, my inbox flooded with silence. Ryan moved to another branch. We never spoke again. And I moved into a small apartment on the other side of town. Just me and my regrets. There's this thing people don't tell you about guilt. It doesn't fade. It just changes shape. At first, it's sharp, like a knife in your chest. Then, as time passes, it dulls into a heavy ache that follows you everywhere, in your coffee, in your dreams, in the silence of your empty home. Sometimes I replay everything in my head. The night I ignored Ethan for my phone, the first message I sent Ryan, the first lie I told. And every time, I come back to the same realization. It wasn't the affair that ended my marriage. It was the moment I stopped choosing Ethan. The moment I stopped seeing his effort, his quiet love, his loyalty. I was too busy chasing excitement to notice stability. Too obsessed with validation to value peace. Too foolish to realize that real love doesn't always feel like fireworks. Sometimes it's just someone waiting up for you, asking if you've eaten. It's been a year now. I heard through a mutual friend that Ethan finished his courses, switched careers, and got a new job, something in administration. Apparently, he's doing well. Really well. He even started dating again. When I heard that, my heart clenched. Not because I wanted him back, but because I realized how much time I'd wasted trying to replace what I already had. He moved on. He healed. And I'm still learning how to live with the consequences of my own choices. Last week, I found an old photo of us, taken years ago, on our first anniversary. He's laughing, holding a slice of cake, and I'm looking at him like he's the only person in the world. And for a moment, I remember how it felt, that pure, simple, unguarded love. I wanted to hate that photo, but instead, I framed it. Not as a reminder of what I lost, but of what I destroyed. Because if there's one thing this entire journey taught me, it's that love isn't about how much you get, it's about how much you give, even when it's not exciting anymore. So here I am now, rebuilding piece by piece. I go to therapy twice a month. I've started journaling. I cook for myself, sometimes even talk to my reflection, trying to forgive the woman staring back. But I don't expect forgiveness from Ethan. He gave me enough love when I didn't deserve it. Now, it's my turn to carry the weight of what I took for granted. Sometimes I still dream about him. Not the man who left me, but the man who used to wait for me with dinner on the table, who smiled through exhaustion, who believed I could do anything. And in those dreams, I always whisper the same thing. I'm sorry, Ethan. I finally understand. Because in the end, karma didn't need to destroy me. It just needed to show me who I had become. And that was punishment enough.